Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Want to be a part of the Nerd Party community? Don't forget to like our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/thenerdparty and follow us on Twitter at JoinNerdParty. You can also help us by leaving a rating and comment in Apple Podcasts to help spread Time and Space to other listeners. If you want to contact us, visit thenerdparty.com/contact, click on our show logo, and leave a comment for us there. Time and Space, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm Jessica Nunn.
And I'm Philip Gilfus, her husband and co-host. Our topic today is notable Ninth Doctor episodes, continuing our ninth month Ninth Doctor spotlight focus. And so you and I both chose episodes, so someone cheated, and we'll get into it.
Wait.
For us.
Just the way you said that suggested that I cheated, and I don't think I did.
Okay, so we'll be talking about that. And what are we going to be talking about for our Inside the TARDIS Library segment?
Inside the TARDIS Library, we're going to take a look at the movie Elizabeth from 1998, which has Christopher Eccleston playing Thomas Howard, the 4th Duke of Norfolk.
Interesting.
I know.
Well, let's get into our notable episodes. So we both, as I said, picked episode parentheses S end parentheses.
No, I'm making a choice, but then I felt like we needed to watch the other one as well.
Well, let's talk about your choice, ladies first.
I chose The Empty Child, and then we subsequently watched The Doctor Dances. And the first episode premiered on the 21st of May, 2005, and it was written by Stephen Moffat.
Yes, his first official entry as a writer for Doctor Who on television.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, when he did write both episodes, I guess that you could assume that, but yeah. He did indeed.
Yep, excellent.
So we have two synopses. I don't know if you want to hit both or just one, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, no, we can talk about both of them. Chasing a metallic object through the time vortex, the Ninth Doctor and his companion, Rose Tyler, arrive in London during the Blitz. While Rose meets Captain Jack Harkness, the dashing time agent responsible for bringing the object, the Doctor finds a group of homeless children terrorized by Jamie, an empty child wearing a gas mask. And then, episode 2, the child's plague is spreading throughout wartime London, and its zombie army is on the march. The Ninth Doctor and Rose form an alliance with intergalactic con-man Captain Jack, but find themselves trapped in the abandoned hospital. They head to the crash site of Jack's supposed space junk and discover the ground zero for the mysterious plague. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun.
So why did you choose The Empty Child for your Ninth Doctor notable episode?
The introduction of Jack Harkness.
That's always good.
Yep, first of all. I think that with this episode, we're seeing a much more playful Ninth Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bit of an arc, and whether it's intentionally an arc or whether it's just Eccleston sort of settling into the role and everybody settling into the idea of it. But he seems much more at ease in his performance, and I really enjoy that. So yeah, those I think are the two main reasons. I love a good Blitz story with Doctor Who. I mean, there are a lot of them,
right?
But I quite enjoy this one, and all of them. I think they're all a lot of fun, and it's such a quintessential British thing, the Blitz, that.
Finest hour.
Yeah, and it absolutely was, and so I think there's a lot to mine from, and this idea is crazy and hectic, and then if you want me to go into the second episode, everybody lives.
Everybody lives.
Everybody lives.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You get, as you say, this is the Empty Child is the ninth episode of Doctor Who for Eccleston, and obviously 10th for the next one, and for the settling in the role, and even for the characters, you said. But yeah, we sort of get that playful beginning of, Rose like, why are we following this object? He's like, I don't know, it's just there. We're just following it.
That's that. Yeah, why not?
No reason, because they had the mauve alert.
Yes, which you struggled with a little bit.
Well, it sounded like Mo, M-O. I didn't hear a V.
I heard it.
But anyway, because red, can get so confusing.
Yep.
So, yeah, but it was interesting to revisit this and see the introduction of Captain Jack, because sometimes you forget. It always did strike me that he seemed very, in memory, seemed very different than what we got. But then there's a bit of an evolution of the character. He's a little more harder edged by Torchwood. But maybe because he's sort of the main character at that point and no longer the companion. But yeah, I did think, and I also thought his look would be unique, which it is, but he does end up wearing that jacket either in the first or second episode, so you do see what the Captain Jack that we'll be used to eventually. So yeah, and it was a sort of a nice, as with every Doctor Who story, you want to split the characters. Doctor goes one way, finds some friends. Companion goes another way, finds some friends. So the Doctor found Nancy and the children, and then the other Doctor eventually. And Rose finds Captain Jack.
Yes. And the other thing I really like about this episode, that I tend to like in Doctor Who, is when the bad guy isn't.
Right.
And I think that brings us into the second episode, of course, much more. But, the idea that it's just mistakes were made, misunderstandings, if you will. And I always think that that's a fun thing to look at, because while black and white, good and evil is great, the shades of gray are what really make Doctor Who for me. Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing scary like a scary child.
Exactly.
Oh, you my mommy.
Yeah. But a misunderstood scary child.
The gas mask helps.
It's a little, red rum. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy the effects
of people
transforming into this gas mask thing. I think that it happened a couple of times, and I was like, nice.
Yep.
Lovely. So, yeah, that's my...
And I do like the introduction of Captain Jack. Because it's Captain Jack. But, how it's interesting to go back and see how they did it, because, the character But, to have him full on with Rose. But then actually, I guess before we see full on with Rose, we see him with his...
he's kind of flirting with the guy.
Yeah, original. Or
he turns into gas mask guy. Yeah.
Archie, maybe that's it.
Archie, I think, sounds right. And
like
then also...
You've got a nice bottom yourself.
Yeah. And then...
time and place.
And then when Rose is like, oh, I'll go distract him, and Jack's like, no, not your type, mate. And then later on, when the Rose and the Doctor are dancing, and she's like, Jack, do you want to cut in? And the Doctor's like, yeah, but with whom? So, yeah, straight away we get, no pun intended.
Right. Well, it's 55th century Rose.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Jack's fluid nature.
He dances with a lot of people.
His dance card is always full. I love him.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see the interaction with the Doctor and Nancy and the children, because as he presents himself not as an authority figure, when he shows up at the house where they're having the stolen dinner.
And he's like one of the other kids.
Yeah, he's
just in the mix.
And he's like, "Oh, that's a great idea. Just taking food and so."
Absolutely.
A bit of a rogue.
Yes. Yeah, and like I say, I think this is where Eccleston really shines, when it feels like it's not a hardship. And we can talk a little bit more about Eccleston at some point, I'm sure, but sometimes he makes it very clear when he's working that he's not having a good time.
Shades of the Seventh Doctor for me in this episode. I can definitely see, Sylvester McCoy's Doctor doing this, because he has that, he has that dark planning side, which the Ninth Doctor has the dark side. But, I mean, he also has that very playful side, and so I could see him showing up to the dinner, too, and be like, oh, what are we having? You know, pass the chops.
Pass the gravy,
exactly.
Bring it on. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there seems to be the slightest frisson between Rose and the Ninth Doctor, but at the same time, a lot of it feels playful and professorial, like the Seventh Doctor and Ace. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like, just once, he tells the cat. I'll find someone who knows the meaning of don't run away.
Yeah.
Wander away.
Interesting and kind of bizarre moments of the Ninth Doctor with a cat.
Yep.
I was like, wonder what went into that.
Is there actually, I mean, you would think Moffat wrote it in the script, but it just seems like, the Doctor grabs cat and talks to him.
Yeah, and then Eccleston, who again is, whether good or bad, is a little difficult. And so his thoughts of, I have to do what now? I have to pick up a what now?
But then, as you said, coming from that playful side, but at the end, where you're sort of having this Doctor Who-esque, all these transformations and this whole town's, turning into monsters or whatever you want to call it. But at the end, everyone lives. But you also have that build-up where he's like, oh, just once, let it happen. And he does sort of his little magical flick,
And again, that joy in Everybody Lives, which I think is such a nice, particularly because the Doctor, the Ninth Doctor tends to be a little darker on the heels of being the War Doctor.
Maybe he's more of a pessimist by nature.
Yeah. And certainly on the heels of Richard E. Grant.
Because, I think with the introduction, I mean, maybe this is going too deep into it, but when you go into Rose, the episode, Rose, and he's sort of like, I'm sort of going where he's sort of saving Earth from the Autons or whatever it was.
Yeah, weird mannequins.
Yeah, but it's sort of a kind of like, I don't know, I'm just here and it's just my job. I know how are you doing, whatever. Bye, And it's sort of he's a very, very disengaged, almost a Grantian Ninth Doctor, if you will. So yeah, but by this time, and then saving Jack, which you would think he would do, obviously, but still saves Jack at the end there.
Yeah.
And we see sort of Jack's development from con man to sacrificing himself, though not meaning to, I suppose.
So Iron Man.
He would go out with a martini as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would be interested, and I haven't seen anything. I've done a little bit, but not a lot of research. I'd be interested in knowing what research Eccleston did before coming in. He strikes me as somebody who would do research.
Right, and it's a hard character, right, yeah.
And so I just wonder, and because he doesn't talk about his stint on Doctor Who very often, and then when he does, it's not usually in particularly glowing terms, so that information isn't readily available. Did he grow up on Doctor Who?
Doesn't seem the type, but I don't know. I don't want to stereotype.
But I don't know.
It was all Shakespeare growing up. I know nothing about him.
No, exactly. Working class.
We didn't have
family,
TV. But,
maybe not a TV. There's a thing, but yeah. What did he want to bring into this?
That's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Or
was it just the page?
Or the pay? It's one of the things, again, doing research into Eccleston, and he's not afraid to be like, yeah, I did Thor, and it's mainly I was just whoring myself out. I'm like, well, that's got to please everybody. But okay, and so I wonder, was this just right, I need a paying gig, or do I feel something for the script that I'm seeing in front of me, or do I feel something for this character who's been in existence for 40 years?
It would be interesting to talk to Russell, and I don't know, I don't know the man. Strikes me as Russell someone who doesn't talk out of school, but it would be, and I don't mean in a negative way, but like,
Where's Eccleston?
Well, but I mean,
out of school.
But it was Chris, we were fans of The West Wing, and we listened to the podcast. Is he like a Richard Schiff, where Richard's going to talk to the director and the writer and say, "Here's my 25 suggestions."
Yeah,
you know, is Chris like that, or I mean, I don't even. He's not even difficult, but just he seems the time that, and I don't know him, but he seems the kind that would have questions, not just like a Joshua Molina who just reads the script and does what the script says.
Yeah, and it's an interesting comparison because, again, listening to the West Wing podcast, and they've had Richard Schiff on a couple of times, and he sounds like a very difficult man to work with, but mostly in a really positive way.
Right, he's asking the questions.
He's a challenging man to work with in a really positive way.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I feel like Eccleston has also gotten that reputation, but I don't know that it's been given that positive light.
Right.
And again, that could just be
cultural, or
not necessarily cultural, but the way people. It's always interesting the way people view it afterwards.
Okay.
I mean, the people on the West Wing love Richard Schiff.
right?
Listening to him talk, I'm like, whoa. I don't know if I'd want to direct him or not because that sounds like hard. But everybody loves him.
Right.
That has not necessarily been the impression that Eccleston leaves. Whether that's his fault or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd like to know more.
Yeah, listener, because especially I don't have the list of Ninth Doctor directors in front of me, but the directors of Doctor Who in that first season of the new series, have they ever talked at conventions and working with Chris? And I don't, of course, I don't. Again, I don't know if whether it's the British culture or just whatever, people just don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah, but it's interesting because we were just recently listening to, or you were just recently, and I caught part of it, listening to an interview with Billie Piper.
Right.
Doing some Big Finish stuff. And she talks about David Tennant.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, he was in the room eventually.
Yeah, but
still, she would know.
Yeah. And there doesn't say, she doesn't say, oh, working with David is great, and working with Chris was good too, or working with Chris was not good. There's
yeah, it's this black hole.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Eccleston claims he was blacklisted after he left the show. Again, I've done a little research.
Okay. That
he had to come live in the U.S. for a little while because he couldn't get work in the U.K. Blacklisted. Again, whether, and I don't know.
Just a BBC thing, or
I don't know. I don't know enough
right.
about the culture. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We would have to do that. But from an outside perspective, no matter what happened, whether it was Chris, whether it was the Doctor Who production, whether it was BBC, whether it was everyone or no one, you're starting this risky proposition of bringing back Doctor Who. Chris is doing great. Of course, it's hard because it wasn't out yet. It wasn't like, oh, no, this worked out. He's like, he left.
Yeah.
And then it came out.
Yeah, you don't know if halfway through, you can't tell because, with American shows, 3 or 4 episodes in is how far in advance they are in filming, so they've got that feedback. And it doesn't happen that way.
Because, in other words, what I'm saying is, it's something that became, the first season. I'm not saying, people thought, yeah, this is working out. It wasn't gangbusters, but it was, okay, this is good. We're going, But then that he left, so then it's like, well, okay, now we got to do everything all over again, and not everything, but, as far as getting a doctor. It all worked out, of course. It all worked out, of course. But I can see why people are all like, all right, well, is he someone that doesn't stick with you, depending on...
But at the same time, I can understand, right, he's been contracted to do these however many episodes, and then that contract is over, and he's got to figure out how to put food on his table after that. Because BBC doesn't pay extortionate amounts of money. So he's got to figure out his next move. And so then if he's not available when the second season option...
pick up or whatever they do with BBC.
Yeah, however that works, that's not his fault. And so, yeah, it's just murky. Looking forward
I know, Richard's...
yes, looking forward
the next
to
video.
the next video.
Yeah. So, yeah, Richard, if you're listening, we want to know all about the Christopher Eccleston backstory.
We need to know more. We can't decide if we want to vilify him or not, and you need to tell us what to do.
It's Facebook. It's complicated.
Yes.
Any more thoughts about your empty child, the Doctor Dances? Obviously, it sort of has lasting legacy with Are You My Mummy?
Yes.
I mean, it's one of those. Of course, it's Moffat. I'm trying to remember if who did Blink. I wonder if he did Blink. But anyway, it's one of those great monster creations. Even though it's a kid and it all turns out well, it is sort of an iconic Doctor Who piece. So,
yeah.
All right, I'm going to Captain Jack. Moving on there. So my choice, coincidentally, of course I chose mine first, so this is just how it turns out, is actually the next episode following these two. So it is Captain Jack's second time in the TARDIS, or first full adventure in the TARDIS. And that is Boomtown, episode 11, which premiered 4th of June 2005, which was written by Russell T. Davies. And do you want to do that synopsis too?
That's only because you want me to say these words. The Ninth Doctor and his companions, Rose Tyler and Jack Harkness, travel to modern-day Cardiff and meet up with Rose's boyfriend, Mickey. There, they discover that their enemy, Blonfell-Foch Passamir Day Slitheen, is very much alive, if without an easy escape route from Earth, and is willing to rip apart the planet to ensure her freedom.
Now, one reason I chose this episode is not because I remembered it well, but just because I remembered it as a talkie. That I just remember the scene of them sitting in the
restaurant,
yes, and just sitting there with the villain and talking, which doesn't, well, I'm sure people will think of a million examples. To me, it doesn't often happen in Doctor Who. There's not a lot of still moments. It's not always action, and there are times when in the midst of action you have these moments to reflect. But it's not even, there's no action. I mean, it's just, they captured her, easily enough in the first act or whatever. I don't know how you break down this episode. But anyway, the actual sort of plot of the episode per se is very short. They find her, she has a plan, they stop her, they catch her. End of story, until maybe a little twist at the end there. But it's sort of like the large half of the episode is just character moments, which is rare in New Who, and well, in all of Doctor Who, I suppose. But
particularly in character moments with your villain,
right? Yeah, because we not only have, and we'll talk about the villain part, probably, but we also have the Rose-Mickey relationship playing a large part. Which I don't think I remembered that it played this large of a part, but we sort of get the Mickey sitting down with Rose and being like, "What's up?" With us.
Where we,
yeah.
I may or may not be dating some girl.
Yeah. And which
is fair, because she's buggered off with some other guy for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, so let's do the Doctor and the villain first. So
okay,
you sort of have, and again, it's an interesting character of the Doctor, and Chris plays it interestingly. I mean, good, but
challenging.
This detached version, because when they capture her, with the team working together, you have Rose, Mickey, Captain Jack, the Doctor, all that. But then she's like, "Oh, we're going to take you back to Slitheen," or whatever. No, that's not what the planet's called.
No, it is definitely not.
But the planet Slitheen, whatever it's called, Cracker for Rain, whatever. So, then she's like, "Oh, well, we have the death penalty there, and so if you take me there," and so everyone sort of has. It's very sort of Dick Wolf, Law and Order. Every character should have a different reaction. It's always been his philosophy when you're writing a story. That's sort of his best. His thing. His dream is to write a story where every character literally has a different reaction to it. So Mickey's an absolutist. Hey, she did bad, kill her. Who gives? Whatever. And the Doctor sort of has this detached.
Meh, not my.
I didn't make the law.
Not my circus, not my monkey.
Yeah. And then Rose is sort of the one who's sort of maybe contemplating it a little bit more than everyone else. And
Jack Harkness is just flirting with everyone.
Exactly. And so, what do you sort of think of the Doctor and the villain having their date and their chat?
Yeah, first of all, I love some of the back and forth that felt a lot to me like... Oh, what's the name of the episode? Let's Go Kill Hitler?
Let's Kill Hitler?
Let's Kill Hitler.
Oh, yes. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so, you've got the poison in the cup and all of those sorts of things that are very much like the River 11th Doctor banana switch and all of that stuff, which I just think is a place that Doctor Who can show this really lovely slapstick side without it getting too slapstick. But I like... We have this Doctor, particularly in retrospect, we have this Doctor who has just come off the Time War and has slaughtered 2 races of people.
Right.
For the good of intergalactic whatever.
Right.
And so that's, his reaction makes sense. His, not my circus, not my monkey. I'm doing the right thing, taking a criminal back, end of discussion. But then, of course, when you sit down and face your enemy and look them in the eye, is that ultimately something that you can do? And I think that that's always an interesting quagmire to end up in.
And then I'm going to jump into the latter part of the outline here. But because of that sort of the conversation they have. And so you get we don't always, I mean, we do, but we don't always get a reflective of the villain. So, what is this blonde Felfotch Passmore Slitheen all about? Because we saw her before in the previous two-part, or World War III, or whatever it was called, with this introduction of the Slitheen. And, so just like bad guy, right? But, she's sort of like, pretends this sort of like, I was, and I'm not making fun of this as a story, but, I was raised bad, I was forced to make my first kill. It was a societal thing. I am what society made me. You can't blame me, et cetera, et cetera. And then I did like her little, and it's also, I mean, this is going to meander. I also like that it isn't set in Cardiff. This is our first set in Cardiff story.
Yeah. We film in Cardiff, we don't set.
Yeah. But she talks about, like, he's like, oh, no, don't you think someone will notice your plan? She's like, oh, the whales would fall into the sea, and, London wouldn't notice. She's like, oh, I'm sounding Welsh.
Yeah, that was an interesting, moment.
But there's this one sort of couple seconds of dialogue that to me is powerful, because she talks about this earlier part in the episode where she doesn't, where she's kind of killing everyone left and right because they're foiling their plan, and the episode starts with her killing someone, but she doesn't kill this one reporter because she learns a little bit more about her, that she is engaged, and then that she's pregnant, and then so the villain decides, I'm not going to kill her, whatever, and so she tells that to the doctor, I let one go, and he's like, oh, they always let one go, so they can tell themselves that they let one go, and then they lets them kill hundreds, and that they tell themselves that, and she's like, only a killer would know that.
I was just gonna say, some of this discussion in the diner feels like the doctor interviewing himself a little bit, this self-recrimination and self-judgment as he's trying to judge her. Mm-hmm. Again, all with the specter of the time war, hanging over his head.
Because, and again, having to watch this again, I don't know if we know this at this point in the series, but, what we do know, we can pretend we know. The doctor could be because it's, what really happened versus what he thinks happened. But anyway, he could be considered a war criminal, obviously, genocide,
yes,
kill too,
absolutely.
And so doesn't he deserve to be punished, Obviously something that would hang over his head for several 3 generations. But anyway, so, it's interesting how he views that. And we sort of get that moment of contemplating that darkness of the doctor.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things that would have made the 50th anniversary special even more layered, because there's that moment where they're in the prison cell, mm-hmm. and the war doctor, is it the war doctor or Rose, the button, whatever, are talking about how Tennant remembers versus how
the man who forgot.
Yeah, the one who refused, the one who knows the exact number of people who died, and the one who stopped counting, that kind of thing. So then to add that layer of the Ninth Doctor, I think would have been really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And he would have played. John Hurt played it well, but Chris would have played it well too.
Well, but I'm not suggesting that they be any different. I'm just suggesting the Ninth Doctor also be part of that conversation.
Right.
If the War Doctor is looking at the Ninth Doctor, the 10th Doctor, and the 11th Doctor.
Mm-hmm. So you're not replacing 9 with
no,
War. You're
not
adding
at all.
9.
I'm adding 9 into the mix of, the one who was literally still hearing the screams versus the one who counted all the loss versus the one who had to stop counting for his own sanity.
Right.
And I think, it would have been an interesting layer.
Well, let's lighten up a little bit with Rose and Mickey. What'd you think of their little dynamic?
I think that their relationship follows true to form all the way through their arc, which I think is really lovely. They've never been Rory and Amy.
No, correct.
And it's always been this sort of, it felt casual.
I think they began as Rory and Amy.
I disagree 100%.
Because that first episode...
Well, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
You're saying. Okay, no, I think actually that's not what you're saying. I think you're saying that Rory and Amy began as Rose and Mickey. Because,
sure.
Just because
yes.
when we think of Rory and Amy...
Yes.
So, yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Although, again, she was getting ready to marry him, and that's something that Rose and Mickey...
not in the beginning, yeah, because it's a time jump. So, because they had the events of the 11th hour, and then like a year later he comes back, and that's when she's about to get married.
Okay.
So,
because she doesn't even know him, really.
Well, she's like, she doesn't really, she's like, it's my friend. He's like, boyfriend?
Yeah.
You know?
She's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So it... she doesn't have any qualms about leaving him to bugger off. Mickey seems a little more invested in the beginning, but then the longer she's gone, the less invested he is. So then when he's like, I might be dating this girl, and then she's like, But at the end of the day, she's like, okay.
Yeah,
it's all right. I've made out with Captain Jack. It's fine.
But I think Mickey, as much as we could make fun of Mickey, he shows self-awareness. He's like, yeah, I came all this way because they're in London, go all the way to Cardiff. Yeah. He's like, why? Why am I doing that when you're just leaving with this guy? And now I'm going to see this girl who maybe I don't even like, but at least I know where she is. And that's what shows a level of awareness.
Yeah, and I think it's very much two people who are settling because that's all they know to do. Mm-hmm. And so then when Rose gets the opportunity to expand her horizons off of the council block, she absolutely takes it. But Mickey's left. And then, of course, later on we get that arc for him.
Right.
Where he gets that moment and makes exactly the same choice.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same choice. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting... And I know they're from London, but, I mean, it's the way... A lot of time... Well, it's like New York and in the Heights, It's this big place, but there are all of these little communities, and they're stuck in this little community, but when the opportunity to expand... Yeah.
Yeah, and they all rise to the occasion, respectively.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Just have big guns eventually and shoot things with them.
And go have adventures with other companions.
And then with Boomtown, there's also, like, loads... Again, this is the last episode, really, because the next two episodes are the last two episodes, which is just, one large story. So there's Foreshadow Planet with this episode. You have the heart of the TARDIS being opened and essentially destroying the villain. Like I said, you have the modern day Cardiff, where we talked about the Rift event, with Charles Dickens and Gwyneth back. Was it third episode, I think, or something. But this is the one where you still get, Rift's still there.
That's a thing.
Yep, and the TARDIS has landed.
I don't know if you remember it, but it's still there.
And it landed there right in Millennium Center and right there on the bay. And this may be important several seasons from now in another spin-off series. And then we have the Blade Drog nuclear power plant, which of course translates as Bad Wolf. And I do love the Doctor's reaction. What is that? What does that translate? Bad Wolf. Oh, this one keeps saying. He's like, yes. Oh, well, probably coincidence,
Yeah.
Pay no attention to it.
Yep.
So what did you think of Boomtown? Probably it's not one you thought that I would pick, but I did. What'd you
think
about it?
And when I think about, I think the Charles Dickens episode would have been also on my list. Boomtown wouldn't necessarily have made the list, because then I'd also have the lone Dalek.
Oh, Dalek.
Yeah. Okay, let's go with that. That was also on my list. So this one didn't crack my top 3 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree 100% that diner scene sticks out.
Right.
It's this really lovely moment that I like it.
Yeah. So like I said, you don't often get the well, in these early days, you don't often get the introspective Doctor.
Yeah.
And I think Moffat plays a lot with it, maybe too much, because you always want to have that mysterious figure in some respects. And Russell restarting the series would, I don't want to look into his mind, but I'm sure that's what he was trying to maintain for the most part. Tin doesn't get that introspective, other than he explores maybe the last of the Time Lord a little bit and Gallifrey and all that, what that means. He's a little introspective at the end about dying and all that. But for the most part, I think this was a nice little moment.
Yeah, and of course, as I said earlier, I always like the shades of grey, where the villain isn't.
I do like. I mean, if there's any criticism, which I don't think there is, if there's any criticism at all, you sort of have this, cartoon villain, in a fine way. That's fine. She's a bad person, right? Bad villain. And then you sort of have this sort of shade of like, well, maybe, society. But I feel like they almost just let off the gas just only a little bit. Like, I think you could let it off a little bit more and kind of played with this, like, maybe we need to think about this.
No.
And then
see,
the
I
switch
was
at the end is
thinking,
like, no, just kidding.
I was just thinking, because they did, she does escape at the end.
She dies at the end, but whatever.
But it's not this heavy-handed preacher.
Right.
We need to sit down with our enemies face to face, and and we're going to get that in my opinion, a beautiful way when we've got the guys that take over people's faces and the Osborns, Osgoods, who are the 2 girls with the scarves, and there's the button, and the Doctor's like, no, you have to sit down.
The Terror of the Zygons.
Yeah. Which is much more heavy-handed with it.
Uh-huh.
Still great. Not too heavy-handed, I don't think. But this is much less of that.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, unless there's any final thoughts about the 9th Doctor notable episodes. So what would have been your second choice or third choice? Really good you cheated.
Those... I think
Dalek
probably Dalek would have been my next, because we get to see this great facing of the Time War that, again, we know very, very little about. But the Doctor knows everything.
Right.
And again, I think that that's one of Eccleston's most beautiful performances.
Yeah. And I don't have the list in front of me. That probably would have been mine as well. Because, again, not a lot to choose from. So there's Rose. I wouldn't have chosen that. There's the final 2, which are fine, but I wouldn't have chosen that, because then I would have had to cheat and choose 2 episodes, and I'm not that kind of person.
You did not write out the rule book.
And then you'd have the other 2-parter from this villain, so that's another 2 episodes out. The only one
which is also fun, because, Harriet Jones.
Yeah, and then the only part would be the second episode with the... I can't remember the title, but, the destruction of Earth and Cassandra and all that stuff. So, all right, well, with that, let's go into the TARDIS library.
Whoosh, 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 whoosh.
When you close your eyes,
I go to the library.
go to the library now.
So, as you mentioned, we'll be talking about Elizabeth, the 1998 movie. Premiered in the UK 23 October of 1998.
So not too far back in the TARDIS library.
No, but certainly pre-Doctor Who from Mr. Eccleston.
Yep.
Of course, starred Kate Blanchett, of course.
Yep.
But, Chris Eccleston is obviously who we're going to talk about for the most part.
Yep.
He played the Duke of Norfolk. I don't know if you can really... synopsis, it's about the early life and early reign of Queen Elizabeth. So, what'd you think about Chris's performance in this?
Yeah, he's playing...
The titular villain antagonist.
Yes, the antagonist. I'm not sure villain is necessarily the right word, but certainly the antagonist. And, he does that well. He has a sternness to him that in this particular film doesn't get tempered at all. Although, we do get Christopher Eccleston.
That's true. He will he will go into the scene. And I'm wondering, because...
Or I assume we do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's gauzy curtain, so I don't know if it was a stunt double
like
or
him,
not.
yeah. You think Christopher Eccleston is going to let someone else do his scene for him?
For his bum? Probably not. No, you're right.
I need to know this scene so I can know the rest of the characters. And I don't mean this as a critique, but I think in some ways this film, and look, I'm not British, so it's not my history, but hashtag not my history. Though it is in some ways, but we'll talk about that later. But it still seems sort of a very basic story. I mean, there's a lot of not trueness about this movie. You know, that's very gloss, historical interpretation, blah, 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 blah. Mm. But, you know, that aside, it's very basic about this is good, this is bad, this is nuanced. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah. No one's really nuanced, but you
go with basic, I'll go with not nuanced.
A more nuanced word.
Yeah.
So let's look at Chris's character, the Duke of Norfolk, and the performance, because, you know, you can say the Duke of Norfolk, who is has a claimish to the throne. I wrote this down. He's Elizabeth's second cousin by maternal grandmother.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's
because it's matrilineal.
It's Howard, I think, is the family.
Which makes sense, because Henry VIII was married to both Anne Boleyn and, of course, Catherine Howard, who was Anne Boleyn's cousin. Mm-hmm. I don't think that would give him any sort of tie.
But he was sort of... But, you know, he's sort of up there. At least that's how the film portrays.
He's certainly very important.
Right. Especially where there's not many choices. Where Henry VIII, you only have the two women, and, you know, Mary, and then has no issue that we know of.
Edward, you forgot Edward.
Well, Edward. Yeah, everyone forgot Edward. And
they
then,
did, yeah. Yes. 9 Days' Reign.
Yeah,
you know, poor Jane Grey.
William and Henry Harrison. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth with no issue as well. And so then you have this whole, let's go to Scotland. But anyway... And then both in the movie, well, let's not forget real history. We're just going to the movie portrays that he, under the Pope's direction or whatever, that he's going to basically try to marry Queen of Scots and you know, claim the throne. Well, I guess through her stronger claim, but with his benign claim as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
So. There you go.
Well, I mean, he's enough of an aristocrat, I suppose, to legitimize. But yes, the expectation is that he will marry Queen of Scots. He also has permission from the Pope and James Bond to assassinate Elizabeth.
Daniel Craig, yes. And it's fine. Pardons for everyone.
Jesus says, okay.
That's right. But I guess this is where it comes from. So the nuanced performance, if you want it to be a nuanced performance, and one presumes that Chris did. This is not early days, but, you know, it's 98. As far as his career. It's interesting because on the DVD, you can click on the people and the extras and they'll list their filmography. Which, you know, I don't know enough about Chris to recognize any of his stuff. But anyway, so the nuance potentially is this, is he ambitious? Well, this doesn't have to be either nor, but is he ambitious? Is he pursuing this thing and antagonizing Elizabeth or cozying up to Mary or antagonizing Elizabeth or all these things, conspiracies just for the power? Or is it because he believes what he says, which is that this is for the Catholic faith, and as a Catholic,
and
he's trying to reclaim
Catholicism is the only true faith,
and he's trying to reclaim the country for the Catholic Church, and so that's the nuance, I think, of the performance potentially.
Yeah.
Where is he coming? I mean, not to be like, what's his motivation, but what's his motivation?
What's his motivation?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I don't know, and again, looking at real history again, and I don't know enough about the Howard/Boleyn family, but again, Anne Boleyn was the whole reason behind the Protestant faith.
Church of England, but yes.
Yes, well, yeah, sorry. Anne Boleyn and Martin Luther, okay, whatever. 95 Theses, gotcha, I'm on the same page. And so it's interesting that this ambitious, virulent Catholic is part of that family. And interesting to look at how that potentially broke down, and I don't know. That suggests leaning more towards ambition. Mm-hmm. But as you say, the two are not mutually exclusive, although one has at least better implications than the other.
Yeah, power for the sake of power versus power for the sake of
Jesus.
your religion. Yeah, and so I mean, and I said it wasn't my. I mean, it is. I mean, we're not to delve into the personal, but we're both Episcopalians, which is the American Anglican tradition, and so Church of England is certainly a tradition, religious tradition that I come from, that I'm in. And so, the history obviously fascinates me. It was sort of explained, finally that, that's why I sort of wanted to make the distinction that you have Church of England under Henry VIII, and not until Elizabeth do you get like, oh no, we're Protestant principles. Let's actually make this about something other than just, I wanted to marry and money.
I have a church, and it's mine.
And I have all this money now and land.
Yep.
And it's also and I get to marry.
Because I took it from the.
And I get to marry who I want. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you have Elizabeth, or at least her reign, creating the Common Book of Prayer, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then I think one thing.
So then James I comes along and is like, I see your Book of Common Prayer. And raise you
a Bible.
That's right. Boom. That may or may not have been written partly by Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. What you gonna do?
Because I think watching this episode now, movie, having seen it several times at this point in my life, and I do enjoy it. But I think I did a little more nuanced as a viewer this time, instead of just saying, "Oh, Elizabeth is the good guy, and Mary and all the Catholics are the bad guy." Because Catholics are bad, I think it's who's really the worst person here. There's obviously a bunch of nuances, especially if you're British, and there's a whole history there. And
well,
blah, blah,
nobody
blah.
calls her Bloody Elizabeth, do they?
Yeah, and we had this discussion at another time. It's because who wrote the history? So
Yes.
Who really killed more people, Elizabeth or Mary?
Yeah, and this is a problem that certainly doesn't get solved here. And as we talked about, the deal was, it was very much, everybody wanted Mary Queen of Scots to rule after Mary the First because she was Catholic. And so then when it becomes clear that Elizabeth is not going to have an heir, they agree that it's got to be James IV of Scotland. But the deal is he has to be Protestant while he rules England. And so there's some sort of compromise and all of that. But then, of course, the Protestant Catholic divide in the United Kingdom is still still a thing.
It's long ago, but in the British timeline, it's not that long ago that Catholics actually got rights. As far as
not that long ago at all. We're talking civil rights for us. Mm-hmm. Right around the same time, and and is an issue that is popping up, and of course it always does, and was then not necessarily about exactly which version of Jesus you adhere to, or whether or not you listen to Mass in Latin, but then becomes a socioeconomic issue. But we're running, with Brexit in all of its hecticness. The issue of Ireland and Northern Ireland and trade agreements and border control and all of those sorts of things, it's still very much a prevalent issue that still causes bumps in the road, as 'twere.
And certainly we had Elizabeth twice in Doctor Who. We had younger Queen Elizabeth with the 10th Doctor. Well, twice. We had the younger in the 50th, during the 50th anniversary, because it had been the running joke for the whole series. And then you had the older Queen Elizabeth during the Shakespeare episode, when she orders the arrest of the Doctor, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So this was sort of the nice turnout. And then, of course, we get James the First.
Yes, of course, and the 13th Doctor.
Yeah, with the 13th Doctor and the
And
Witchfinders.
Elizabeth the 10th. So,
exactly, yes. So, and so, but anyway, so it's
and Victoria, but that's different.
Yeah, it's different. So I enjoy this movie again. It's
Kate Blanchett's great.
This was her coming out, basically. And she got like 1 million awards, and that's how she became Kate Blanchett. But So.
And Joseph Fiennes is always good. Mm-hmm. I always enjoy Joseph Fiennes in tights because that is predominantly apparently what he does.
I love Geoffrey Rush as Walsingham.
He makes a very good British man for an Aussie.
Richard Attenborough as...
Yes, of course. And I know that you love his nature shows as well, which is our running joke. We know that that's not correct.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so yeah, good movie. All the usual British stars make a run at it. So.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so what are we going to talk about next week, darling?
I assume we're going to talk about the Ninth Doctor.
Well, you would be correct.
Thank you.
Well, one thing that the Ninth Doctor didn't have, that many of the other Doctors did have in New Who, was...
a Christmas special.
So we will be writing our Ninth Doctor Christmas special. Well, thanks to always to Wally and the Sononauts for providing us with their jazz Doctor Who theme tune. And until next week, enjoy the Doctor's many adventures throughout time and space.
This is BBC Television.